Hey, what's up, everybody? My name's Indy, and that guy right over there is Jay, and this is Indie Game Business. So welcome. So today we have Lloyd. What is your last name? I'm sorry, Lloyd.
Melnick.
What is it?
Melnick.
Melnick?
Lloyd Melnick.
Melnick.
Yes.
I've always liked that last name. And we're talking about hyper-casual games. Hyper-casual games. So how's it going?
Great. How's it going with you guys?
Good. Got my coffee.
Yes, the important stuff.
Yep.
So Lloyd is who I call my mentor. He is my mentor. It's not just like I call him that. Lloyd was the guy who hired me straight out of college, got me my first job, and taught me everything that I know. And so it's awesome having you here, man. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad we could get a chance to do this.
Thanks, young Jedi Jay was.
Padawan. A
I once was
Padawan.
a student,
Mhm.
and now I am the master. So yeah, we're Lloyd is the director at Stars, who does real money gambling games, as well as I don't know, what do you call the non-real money, fake money gambling games?
Social games.
Social games.
Social.
Okay, good. And so hopefully at some point during the show today, Lloyd can explain to me why people spend real money on slot machines that don't pay out any money, because I still don't fully understand that. But it happens and it's good. So, all right, let's start where we always start, Lloyd. Tell us how you got into the industry, including that horrible university that you went to, and then walk us through your career since then.
Okay, yeah. So I was sort of the Zion Williamson of the gaming space. No, this might bring back some PTSD for you, Jay. But so I graduated from business school at Duke in 1993, and with one other guy, we decided to create a game company. And literally, we started it in a trailer in Durham, North Carolina. Jay, you can affirm that I'm not exaggerating. It really was a trailer.
They said that was an office, but that was not an office. Those were trailers.
Yes, it was a prefab office, which was a rich man's trailer park. But nothing wrong with that. But so we started a game company back in '93. And just to put it in perspective, one of the reasons we went into gaming was that's when CD-ROMs were replacing floppy disks. So games could have a lot more graphics. It was also, I think, the last time that Jets were better than the Patriots. So it was a real long time ago. And we started, again, back in '93. And what we were doing was a combination of representing game developers, small game companies, licensing for them, and then also what we called, kind of a arbitrage publishing model where we would license products and then sub-license them. So, we were working with, in retrospect, some really cool companies we ended up with. Again, Jay, you probably remember these as clearly as I do. We worked with a company called People Can Fly that ended up becoming Epic's Gears of War developer. Another company called Crack.com, which had some, one of the top people working on Doom. So we got exposed to a lot of kind of interesting people in the industry. Some not so interesting people also, unfortunately. And I think we were not in the premium part of the space, but, kind of what would sell for $19.99. Now at places like Walmart and Target, in those days it was Egghead, Circuit City. The industry's changed a little, but it was kind of the trash in a box, for lack of a better word, CD-ROM games. And I think Jay's laughing because he agrees completely with how I describe the products. Obviously, I don't have a too big a sense of them. And it was more about creating a beautiful box than it was creating a good game in those days. Because there was you were trying to convince people to go into a retail store and buy a box, and then you couldn't care less if they liked it or not when they came home. And that wasn't only the small companies like us. I think that's how the THQs and Acclaims and they approached the business also. We did that. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
In addition to People Can Fly, and so we were also the company that helped bring EVE Online to the States for the first time. We worked with Paradox. We did all of Simon & Schuster's International back when Simon & Schuster did games.
And did Star Trek games.
Yeah.
Full line Star Trek products.
Heimamont is actually still around, and ironically enough, working with Paradox now. And we worked with Patrick Soderlund over at DICE before Battlefield 1942 came out. So we were on the front end of a lot of companies that are still around today.
We actually made the brilliant decision not to stay with Patrick Sutherland and chose a competing company at the time. Or else the world would be very different right now. So as I said, there's some bad memories too. But I think we all had a great time. Jay was our first employee. Good times and bad times always in the game industry. It's never boring now. And then in the kind of the early 2000s is when casual gaming hit the market. And by casual gaming, it was sort of the download products that, Big Fish still is doing to a degree. Real Networks with a big company. You might remember them. They were mainly, as opposed to what at the time was probably called Real Games, these games were more targeted to 40 plus women. They were often hidden object games or puzzle games like Bejeweled. And that's kind of where I'd say we kind of hit our stride. We started publishing and developing our own games, had a bunch of top 5 games on Big Fish. And things were going, really well for us then. That's when, the company, we changed the name to Merscom. And I think we became a legitimate casual game publisher, doing well. Then one evening, I was at GDC, met with a friend who was at Playdom at the time. And we had always looked at the free-to-play space and kind of laughed. I still remember when Zynga got its first round of financing. I was talking to my business partner about how their venture capitalists were just throwing away money. Who would ever pay for a virtual object? But I was having dinner with this guy from Playdom, which at the time was the number 3 social game company, or Facebook game company, because there was no other. I guess there was MySpace, but that was about it. And he was telling me how much money they were making per day. And they were actually, as kind of a smaller player, they were actually making more than Big Fish. So I remember the next morning, because I would have called that night, but I was too drunk. So the next morning, I gave my business partner a call, kind of told him how incredible this free-to-play space was. We then got on the phone with a group that had invested in us, raised another round of investment, moved into social gaming, started creating our own Facebook games. And then even before we were able to launch, about 4 or 5 months later, we sold the company to Playdom. I took over, going back to why I'm talking about me, I took over as Playdom's head of international, or general manager of international, to work to bring their games overseas. They had games like Mobsters, Sorority Life, all the classics. And then,
but those games were huge. I mean,
they were making more than
so
console games.
Simple compared to what we've got, now. But they were absolutely huge.
Yeah. I mean, just remember Farmville. I remember walking into like a coffee shop, and literally everybody had it on their. I don't know if it was phones. They didn't have as many mobile phones those days, but they had it on PCs, and everyone was playing Farmville. Everyone was playing Mafia Wars. The Zynga games, especially. Yeah, they were huge, and that's why like 3 months after Playdom bought us, Disney bought Playdom. Which was huge. And to be honest, it was huge for me. I took over as general manager for their European and Latin American publishing for all of their interactive products. That was really cool job. Working in Disney was the exact opposite of being at a startup. I think Disney has something like 65,000 employees. And then I left Disney, and I think it was 2012. In retrospect, possibly the biggest mistake of my life, but that's for a different radio show. And I was enticed to join a joint venture of 2 media companies that wanted to get into social gaming because it was so easy to make buckets of money, as people outside the game industry always feel about the game industry. After a year, it turned out that they realized they didn't have the stomach for it. And I went to another startup called Spooky Cool Labs, which was doing social casino. And I had the same question as Jay, like, why the heck would anyone pay money for pay money to get virtual chips that you can never cash out? But I knew it was kind of a hot space, so I figured, okay, I'll take the job and then I'll figure it out, which I did. And then another 3 months later, we got acquired by Zynga. where I was senior director, running it, setting up their VIP and loyalty program, doing CRM, licensing. At Spooky Cool, I had done everything non-product related. It was really cool because I was working with not only Zynga Poker, but at the time that kind of hit slot product, hit it rich. And then in 2015, I was recruited to the Stars Group, which at the time was Poker Stars, that Jay mentioned. One of the largest real money game operators in the world. They're now about a $2 billion company, as they had recently been acquired by a public company, and part of their growth plan was to move into social gaming, hence me. So I took over the social gaming group and have been working on that ever since. So that, for better or for worse, is the story of Lloyd and kind of how I came to be on the show.
So yeah, and to further solidify my intelligence, when Lloyd was going through that whole section about they got bought, then they got bought, then they got bought, which was big for him, I had already left the company. I wasn't there anymore, and so I watched everybody get bought and bought and bought. But anyway, yes, it is. I mean, it's amazing to think of how things have changed when we don't even realize how much they've changed. Because I mean, Mafia Wars today would barely be comparable to some of the games that you can play within a Discord server. I mean, it's just a very, very simple game, but they were making tons of money on it. And Farmville, and it's like everything.
You're right. Messenger games are better.
Oh yeah,
higher production quality now.
You look at the monetization and the design decisions that were made in the original Farmville, and it's funny because we had Jordan on a couple months ago, and Jordan was one of the designers on Farmville 2. But all of the things that made Farmville make so much money would be absolutely crucified in the industry today. The whole, if you don't log in and pick your crops, then they rot and you've wasted all that money. There's just absolutely, no way to do that now. And Crytex, you can ask a question absolutely anytime that you want to, and we'll get it taken care of.
Yeah, I'm watching chat, so if you got a question, okay, I'll just interrupt everybody. And wait, here's a question.
So let's start with, what are hyper-casual games? Where did they come from? What are they?
So I think they've always been around to a degree, but they're effectively kind of small. I guess the industry calls them lightweight, instantly playable, easy to learn, endlessly replayable mobile games. So effectively, there's a whole list of them we can go through, but it's a game you can download and be playing and having fun in probably 1 minute. And that's, I think that's almost the rule. Is you get online in Starbucks, you decide you want to download this hyper-casual game, you've already played through a couple levels by the time you get your latte. And that's what makes them special. And I think that's why they're doing well now and why it's become its own category. I wouldn't say genre because there's different genres within it, but it's that, games have become more and more complicated. As you said, games like Mafia Wars or Farmville, it's just evolved so much. And there's almost not a intentional, well, maybe it is an intentional backlash. People just want something fun, simple, easy to play, and that's what these hyper-casual games are. And they're quick, they're small, they don't take up much room on your phone. They serve a need.
So, what are some examples of like, the best ones?
I mean, I think best again is subjective. What I like probably is not at all what you would like, knowing you. But I actually had a feeling you'd ask that, so which ones I have on my iPad. So my favorite, it's Merge Dragons, and I think you could call that best because Zynga just paid a couple $100 million to buy that company, Graham Games. It's Fireballs 3D. There's a basketball game from Ketchup, which is incredibly simplistic, but I love it. It's probably the one I play the most. Crowd City, I actually really enjoy. Those are my favorite. There's millions. There's Agar. There's a whole. Each one of them is like its own category. Agar.io, Color Bump. And there are like 6 different genres within hyper-casual. So the ones that I listed are the ones that I like. But you might like swiping more, or Dan might like merging games like Merge Dragons, or just where you're stacking stacking boxes upon boxes, or if it's tapping. They're literally, as I said, 6 or 8 subgenres inside of hyper-casual, or maybe genres within hyper-casual. So it's hard to say what's best and worst. And that's the beauty of them also, because they're so small. You play them, and you download 20, and you keep one on your phone.
So Merge Dragons is like the Spry Fox game where you merge 3 things and they become one more thing, and you
exactly.
Yeah,
I don't remember the Spry. I remember the guys from Spry Fox. I don't remember the game.
I can't remember the name of Tiny Town, Bear Town, something.
It might have been Tiny Town. I know it's yeah. That's it though.
Okay, all right. Well, that's easy enough.
All right,
that's like its own category.
We got a question in the chat.
Triple Town. That's it.
Yeah,
sorry.
We got a question in the chat. What do you think about the moral perspective of a lot of mobile games, poker or some casual games, which are basically only focused to make a lot of money? For example, by finding whales. I mean, some people lose the control over their money because of the design of such games, and it might ruin their basis of existence.
So I disagree. So first of all, I think people are responsible enough, and it's not just games. You have people who spend hundreds of thousands of dollars following a band or following Ariana Grande, which to me is a lot crazier than spending a couple $100,000 on Clash. You have people spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. There's always, they call them whales. I actually never let people I work with call them whales. I consider them VIPs. But there's VIPs in almost every industry. It could be bicycling, motorcycle races. I live on the Isle of Man. God knows why. No, actually, because I have a great opportunity here and it's not a bad place. But there's a motorcycle race called the TT. You have people who spend possibly half their life savings to come for a week here to watch a motorcycle race. And a motorcycle race, it's designed to appeal to those people. Is that any worse than Clash or anything? Now, I will say with hyper-casual, it's almost the exact same business model. There's no such thing as a VIP in hyper-casual. It monetizes almost everybody who plays it. And it's actually, I think the reason it's become so popular is that it's much more of something that isn't relying on 0.5%. But on a moral level, I don't think there's anything wrong in creating a product that a small minority of people are willing to spend a lot of money. Now, some people spend irresponsibly, but they do on everything. Look at credit card debt in the U.S.
All right. So wait, you said that it monetizes almost everyone. So what is the conversion rate on a hyper-casual game?
Well, it's ad driven, and you see ads from the moment.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
That's the whole point. It's in-app. Merge Dragons is an exception. And I actually think Zynga might have gone too far the other way with it because they do have in-app purchases, IAPs, but almost all of them are ad-driven. Now, I do think there's a lot of room to fix them because if you play these games, the ads are, to say annoying is one of the biggest understatements around. They're just way too intrusive. They mess up the gameplay experience. They effectively give ads a bad name, and ads didn't have a good name to begin with.
Another question. How do hyper-casual games make money? If they're so short, could you give an example of the game loop?
And so it is advertising. And well, let me kind of first say how you make money, and it is tied into the game loop question. But and actually, so as soon as you download the game, there will be ads served on the screen with the game. So I mentioned I like this basketball game from Catch App. And I think it's just called basketball, so it's pretty easy to find in the App Store. It's very straightforward. You can't see this because I don't have video on, but you flip the ball into the hoop. After you hit it a couple of times, the hoop starts going right to left and up and down. You have to get it in. But on the side of the game is advertisements. Then when you miss a shot, before you can start playing again, you sometimes have to watch a 2-second or a 5-second or a 10-second video, and that's how they make their money. And where they're different than regular casual games is they have to, for them to be successful, they have to have a lot more day one retention. So they'll buy a user, about half those users need to come back the next day. And if they achieve that, then they've pretty much paid for their user pretty quickly.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas, so it's again, opposite of whale driven. or VIP driven. I can't believe you got me to say whale.
All right. We got more questions coming in.
Oh, wow. I didn't
Carjack
expect any.
First, thank you a lot for answering. In my opinion, a big problem with those mobile games is that they play with psychological tricks and stuff, and I think that that's the unmoral part of it. So, another question. Oh, and good morning.
Let me just address that quickly because it's actually something, because I consider myself a very moral person. Jay, don't laugh. But I don't think it's any more immoral than what Walmart or Target does in terms of where they put products in a store, or any consumer company, how they package toothpaste. Again, if you believe in capitalism, which I do, I'm not a Cortez whatever fan. I don't think. Again, mobile games are any more immoral. You're trying to give people a good experience and get them to pay for it. Right. So sorry to go off on my little rant, but I do consider it important.
Food, then they do they scientifically make it to where the food you eat is addictive. Where you just can't have just one. So they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on that stuff. All right, so here we go. What's a minimum LTV that you need to achieve to make UA practical in Hyper C? Is that a question? I don't even know what that means.
I can answer. Okay, so first, for those who aren't kind of from this space, what they meant is UA is user acquisition. So effectively, how much you're paying for an install. Hyper C, I assume Hypercasual. Actually, haven't heard it before. LTV is lifetime value. So in the hyper-casual space, and this isn't me giving you any secrets, this is actually some information that Voodoo has published. So it's some, and they're the biggest hyper-casual publisher out there right now. So they normally have CPIs, so cost per install, of 20 to 30 cents. So obviously you need an LTV of more than 20 or 30 cents to be profitable. It's going to depend a little bit on your geo, but that's generally where you're marketing. And to get there, I was talking about that day one retention. They have to, with Voodoo, for them to support a game, they have to have CPIs in the 20 to 30 cent range. I think the day one retention has to be 50%. So 50% of people who download the game come back the next day, and 25% of them are still playing on day 7. So hopefully that answers the question.
That is ridiculously good retention.
It is. I mean, it is, because when I saw that compared to, where you're happy to have 32, 33% day one, it is incredibly high retention. And then you layer on that how simple these games are. But I've looked at my own patterns, and it's true. There's a lot of them I come back to. Now, the thing is, you're not going to have many probably playing the same game in 6 months. They probably burn out after a few weeks. I know I have. I haven't seen the data. Whereas I think, like with a Slotomania or Zynga Poker, you literally have people playing 4, 5, 10 years after they've downloaded it.
Yeah, but I mean, and part of that isn't just the game; it's the sheer number of these games that are out there. So it's like when you get tired of playing one, there's always another good one to jump to, which is why you see a lot of these companies like Voodoo and Ketchup, and they're like releasing a game a week.
I think more than that.
Yeah,
I'd argue. I mean, it's probably I don't know the number. I think someone like Voodoo is probably close to
a game a day. Is that,
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. So, where would you say this all started? I mean, because the stat that you had on your blog, and I'll post a link to your blog too, because if you are interested in monetization and the business side of social games, Lloyd has a fantastic blog that goes along with it. How much? So it was what, 60% of the successful games last year?
60% of downloads are hyper casual.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say 60% of revenue is hyper casual, and I wouldn't be surprised if 60% of revenue is Fortnite. So, but 60% of not just game all downloads in the Apple and I think Google Play Store, I know it's Apple, were hyper casual games last year.
So when did this take off? Was there something that it started with? I mean, like we see PUBG and Fortnite kicked off the whole battle royale, run, and the games. I can't remember what the first hidden object games. But there's usually like a genesis of these things. Where did it come from?
Well, I think it's almost the opposite. Like in the casual space, you had Bejeweled around for years almost before you got millions of Match 3. And here you did have games like, the Flappy Birds and a lot of those quiz games. I forgot which ones they were now, but everyone plays them for like 2 months and they think the company's worth $1 billion and then they go away. Or, mini clip games, like the Super 8, I think it is, the pool game. I forgot what it's called. Those have been around, probably from the beginning of mobile. You always had indie developers putting out games. But I think what changed was, and I only noticed this, and I'm not at the cutting edge of this, I noticed it probably about 6 months ago, was the monetization. Because ad revenue wasn't a big driver before, and they weren't good at probably getting enough monetization to cover the user acquisition costs. And then it was probably Voodoo, because they are the leader now, figured it out. They figured out how to serve ads. They got much more aggressive with it. Again, my opinion is they probably got too aggressive with it, but they got it to the point where the ad revenue now covers the acquisition costs, which it had never done before. You had very few ad-supported games. I guess Word with Friends is an exception, but you had very few successful ad-supported games before 2017. So someone just figured out how to get more annoying with the ads, but effectively, annoying is not the right word. It's the reason that we have all these good games now.
So Pine's got a question. He says, Voodoo's a huge company and maybe they can buy millions of users for 20 cents CPI, but how can indies acquire users for that lower price? If you bid 20 cents on Google ads, you'll get very few installs per day, which is something we were going to get to at the end anyway, but I mean, we'll just go ahead and jump to it right now. There's still an opportunity for small developers, indie devs, to get in on this, which is different. I mean, usually we're sitting here going, for God's sakes, as an indie dev, don't jump into free to play. You're going to get slaughtered. But here is a chance where they actually, can. So, how would you, if you're a small, 1 to 10 person studio and you want to get in on this, how would you attack it as an indie dev?
So I think, and you're actually probably better suited to give answers and details on the actual publisher level. But this is one area, I actually have a very bad taste in my mouth about publishers from when I was an agent in those days. And publishers took a huge, well, we won't talk about that. No, publishers often did not add much value. They screwed developer. I mean, it's not screwed developers. It's not the right word. It was a very confrontational relationship. I don't like saying screwed developers because a lot of publishers went bankrupt and didn't make money either. But it just didn't really work. I was thinking about it when you sent some topics over that we might want to discuss today. And I actually do think that in Hypercasual, it makes more sense that you have a publisher. So first, the publisher cut is not nearly as big, from my understanding, as it is in the console world and probably even in the casual world. So there are developers who've made in the tens of millions of dollars from hyper-casual games that have gone through like Voodoo. They've made a lot of people very rich. So I think they're better at sharing it because they're not. Because they don't have to make the same kind of investment. They really only make an investment if you're hitting those KPI numbers in terms of retention and CPI. So they're not taking the risk and they can finance it. That said, So I think, and also because you can create these games in 2 to 3 months. I think that's normally what a good I've talked to some hyper casual developers. We're working on a couple. That's normally the time frame. So if you keep churning them out and then you go to a publisher, even if you're splitting half your revenue, it's probably worth it to let them pay that it's not only the 20 to 30 cents, but because Voodoo has millions and millions of daily active users, there's a lot of cross promotion involved. And they can seed the game, so you don't even have to spend it. I think you're going to have to get really lucky as an indie to be able to self-publish, but I also don't think you need to self-publish. It's not like you're only doing one game every 2 years or every year. You have to get every penny out of it. You're better off as an indie. Let's say you can do, 6 games a year, and you're getting half the revenue. That means you're still getting the full revenue for 3 games. So you can talk about who the good publishers are. I've seen, I know who's successful in terms of market share. I don't know which ones are honest. I think there's stories about some of them stealing ideas that we were talking about offline and everything. That space a lot better than me, Jay, and I'm sure you do too, Dan. But this is one of the areas where I think you need to work with a publisher because they know how to get you those users in that critical mass.
So along those lines, I can attest to the fact that there are a lot of publishers who are actively looking for these games, which is different than a lot of other genres. If somebody is creating a different kind of free-to-play game, that publisher is going to have a short list of developers to go to based on that developer's prior experience. But with these hyper-casual games, one, like Lloyd said, the time to market is infinitely shorter, and there's a lot of hungry developers. You think about it. If you're putting out a game a day or a game every 2 days, you have to have a big pipeline of new games coming in. So you've got a better chance of landing a publisher, and then they're gonna get that route taken care of for you. I mean, as far as the ads and things like that, it's just a matter of finding the right publishers to send it to and to submit it to.
All right, we got.
And one thing I'd add.
We got questions real quick. So it's possible to have a profitable game just from ads. Do you think Instagram ads are good for mobile? Cool. Ari,
okay, so
on the follow.
So in the first case, yeah, as I said, there have been hyper-casual companies that have made tens of millions of dollars entirely ads. I mean, you can also generate money getting people to pay to take away your ads. I'm not sure, kind of a freemium model, but that's less than 5% of the industry revenue. So these companies, again, that have made into millions, or I'm sure the tens of millions are only 2 or 3, but they're there. And there's lots in the 6 figures. That's all been ad driven. So the answer to that is yes. Instagram, I'm talking now, this is hearsay because we haven't done much marketing or promotion on Instagram, but it seems to be a growing, successful channel. So I'd look at it, but I'm hearing that rather than talking from experience. Also wanted to go back to something Jay was talking about with publishers. There's a lot of publishers out there now who want hyper-casual games. Having been here since 1993, going back to the first part of the interview, companies, one thing about the game space is once something's successful, everyone tries to do it. And people who have no friggin' idea what they're doing. And that's hyper-casuals now, the sexy, topic, it's what people are not only talking about, but they think it's get rich quick again. So everyone wants to do it. So you have a lot of publishers who, might understand console. They might understand, free to play, casual download. Hyper-casual is different. And, the Voodoos and the Grams and the Catch Apps, again, not saying if they're good or bad, they in terms of their moral fiber, but those guys know what they're doing. They know how to drive users. They know how to get those CPIs in the 20 to 30 cent range. They can cross promote. If you're going to, let's say, an EA, that this is not their core business, but they might want to be in hyper casual so they can say it in the next earnings report. They'll want to sign the games, but they'll have no idea what to do with them, and they'll end up probably costing you the opportunity to work with someone who really can make your game into one of those hits.
And that comes back to what we constantly preach on these shows: is you have to vet your publisher. You can't just go out and pick the first one that comes along. Right. If you don't know who you're going with and what their experience is in this particular market, then you're setting yourself up for trouble there. Exactly.
And most of them will not tell you they're not the right publisher.
No, hell no. That's where you have to do a little bit of your own research. Yeah. Yeah, Crytek's actually had just 2 links. I know you can't see them, Lloyd, but that shows the most popular genres from last year around September. The top 3 are basically casual, puzzle, and arcade. So, sorry. So, Devorium said, who would be the right publisher for this type? Voodoo and. Who else is leading out there, Lloyd?
So the ones I've been looking at, both from a competitive side and kind of potential partners. So you have Voodoo, you have Gram. What's interesting is AppLovin, which is a user acquisition company, has moved into the space, and they're actually become one of the big publishers. Trying to think of some of the others who have really taken off. Voodoo, Graham, let me get back to it in a little bit. I'll think about it. I got a mind block right now.
All right, Rock Knight Studios has a question. Does the quality of hyper-casual games matter? I'd assume it matters for retention.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way you would have that 50 or 60% if it's garbage. It has to be able to hook people. That said, I also think like on the tech side, you have a lot of kind of really garbagey games. So they might have a fun mechanic, but they crash a lot. They're like games from 5 or 10 years ago. So I do think quality matters. I think it's going to matter more in the future. When it's a game a day and there's more, if that game crashes, you're not going to come back to it because you have 20 different options. But, so I think gameplay matters. Tech quality, I've seen it a lot more inconsistent. I did remember, or actually I found a couple other publishers. So I think the top 5 are Voodoo, Ketchup, Graham, Legendary, and Quali. And I'll send you that if you want to put that up in the chat later, Jay. I'll send you those names.
Oh, chat is like filling up with questions, but I'm going to jump in front of the line because it's our show. So we've got the best analogy that I can come up with, in terms of old school gamers is if you want to know what hyper casual is, it's WarioWare. That's the little stuff that was in WarioWare is a good example of hyper casual. So
it's funny you say that because I was with a old gamer yesterday. We were presenting hyper casual at an internal meeting. He used the exact same example.
Yeah,
so
I mean, that's what it is. And so given the way that this industry usually works, and we've talked about cycles on the show, and everybody's like, oh, the industry's changed so much, and you're like, yeah, not really. It's the same stuff, just kind of gets recycled. Are we heading for an area where it becomes less of here's my one hyper casual game, and we start see here's 50 hyper casual games in one game, the whole bundling thing that you and I know all too well? Is that the next step for this?
I'm not sure what value that is to the player. What benefit does he get from downloading 50 games where he'll like in WarioWare, you might like 3 or 4, to finding the 3 or 4 he is more, or the 10 he's more likely to like in the App Store? Does he get a benefit from a bundle? Excuse me. In a way, like Voodoo is a bundle themselves, and they're cross-promoting and sending people to the right game. I actually think it's going to become more of that, and that's why the publishers are going to add value, because the publisher will actually be the curation. And, I think one of the other things, you mentioned my blog that I like to write about is analytics. And, the other big trend you're seeing is machine learning. You can go to Amazon's recommendation engine and stuff. And if you couple that with hyper casual, you could see how Voodoo would see how you play certain games and the ones you come back to, and then direct you to the ones that you want. And that's where I see the publishers evolving, and that's, to me, gives more value than just buying a bundle. Because in your example, and I remember this Cirrus, like 7 or 20 CD ROMs, and each one of them had 50 games, and there'd be like 5 games in there. I guess I don't see and that most of that was junk, and you were just selling. The reason people bought it is because they thought they were getting a lot of value, but in free to play where the games are free anyway. What's the value of getting a bundle?
Well, and that's, I agree wholeheartedly. I'm looking at that consumer mentality of, even if it's free, I can download one game, or I can download this app and it's got 20 games.
It might be worth a try. Who knows? I might release a bundle in a month after this conversation.
Yeah, because games like
it wouldn't be like me not to steal an idea.
Roblox has just like an endless amount of games.
Which one?
Roblox.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But I haven't played Roblox. That's free. Is that free to play?
Yeah,
it's free, but the games themselves cost money, because that's how Roblox.
Free to play, but there's monetization within them.
Got it. All right, so let's scroll back up and try to catch up to where we were. Does the quality? All right, we did that one. All right, so Pine says, does hyper casual focus on international audiences more than North America and Europe because of the low user acquisition costs?
No, Those are acquisition costs primarily in the U.S. So, I mean, the benefit of the U.S. is the advertising is worth a lot more. So, let's say a user costs 30 cents in the U.S. and 5 cents in India. You're still going to get a lot more value serving them ads than you will that player in India or Indonesia. And again, you just look at the App Store. It's the U.S. App Store. It's even though I'm on the Isle of Man, it's still my App Store, and that's the one where 60% of the downloads are hyper-casual. I actually think it's more U.S. than international because these games are small. A lot of people haven't really paid attention to localization and creating your Romanian version or your Belarusian version yet.
But it seems like, just given the difference between the kind of mobile games that we play in the US and Europe and Japan, for example, it seems like these would be huge in Japan.
Yes. I have no idea. It would make a lot of sense.
But that's where, initially we got a lot of our, more simple mobile games is from, the Japanese commuters. Yeah. Having something to play while they were, on the train. So,
and the Japanese have always really understood the UI part of it, making things, well, not all Nintendo, they really understand kind of the, almost like Apple, creating that really quick experience, not quick experience, but, not making things overly complex, being able to appeal to everyone. It's behind the Wii, it's behind the Switch. They've been able to change how the person interacts with the game. And I think these hyper-casual games, even though they're obviously all on a mobile platform, it's the same type of thing where they're much more connected to you and much more natural than, a kind of complex Western game, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No. What's next, Indy? You're watching chat faster than I am.
All right, let's see here. Do you think that premium titles can still succeed on mobile, and do they need a different advertising model?
By premium, I assume you mean pay 99 cents or $2.99. I've never been in favor of that model. It's never seemed to work. So I think hyper casual or non. It's actually worse for hyper casual because you're not giving people as much value in many ways. As I said, they do have that freemium option where you can pay to get rid of ads. But what I've seen in the social games.
We cut out.
A freemium model.
Okay.
So
you cut out there for a big.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I guess what I was saying. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so I guess what I was saying was I've never been a big fan of that freemium premium model because you limit your revenue too much with the people who like the game. So in hyper casual or ad supported, they're going to play it a lot, see a lot of ads. It's going to generate a lot more than the $1.99 or $2.99 you can charge. In free to play, someone who's going to spend thousands of dollars, which drives if a game succeeds or not, is going to spend the $1.99. So it's virtually. Again, I don't think the freemium model in general works on mobile, full stop.
And I mean, the only place that I've seen it be successful recently is basically with ports of other premium games from other studios. Because it's like, why would you pay 99 cents or $1 or $2.99 or whatever for a game in the hyper casual market when there's probably, 50 other games that are very similar to it, at the same time.
And it might work with an IP if it's like a Love Island game. You want to connect with that IP, but even there, I think you will end up making more money by doing it ad supported.
All right, so next one. So we've actually covered a lot of these questions already.
Yeah.
This is awesome. So. In your blog post, because Lloyd had a really, really good blog post on this a couple of weeks ago, you compared this to the early days of slots. So why is that?
I think because anyone can make money. It's the easiest way. And again, I know the social casino space, so I compare it to slots, but I'm sure in your experience you've seen this in a lot of it probably was the same with Nintendo DS. And it's like if you're early to market in a successful genre, I mean, it was definitely the same with Xbox Live. You make a ton of money, and that's what happened in slots. You don't have to have a good product, but just putting it out there, they were able to make because there's latent demand. There was a lot of people wanted to play slots games. There were only a few. So as long as you had something that was effectively playable, you can make money. And then what happens is always happens in the game industry and probably in life in general. Once it's very easy to make money, everyone copies it. Everyone tries to do it, and it becomes more and more competitive. It drives up the production costs. It drives down the revenue, and it becomes like every other industry. And my guess is you're going to see the same to a degree in hypercasual. The reason we're having this call, I got on the bandwagon. I didn't invent hypercasual. I'm not the founder of Voodoo or Graham, unfortunately. But I saw what was happening, and a lot of people are seeing it now. That's why, when I blog about it, it's some of my favorite posts. You're getting more questions than I would have expected, which shows that there's interest in this topic.
Yeah,
and I think. Yeah, and I think that's a double-edged sword, as it was for social, because what happens is when there's a lot of interest, you get a lot of publishers moving into the space. They'll start financing games, and there's only a finite amount of games people can download and can play, and it's going to get more competitive. So maybe it won't drive up the production cost that much, but it'll drive up those CPIs. Or it's going to be a lot more challenging. It's going to drive out, hopefully not the indies, but it's going to drive out the bad developers. You were saying, it's the people who are kind of on that edge now of being, profitable. They're not, no one's going to play those games. So it's going to become a much more competitive, but for the consumer, it's going to be a much better experience, because a lot of the garbage will still be there, but it'll either be curated out. And I think on the plus side, there will be a lot more really good games.
So this is awesome, everyone. And this is some of the fastest activity we've had coming in since that, show that we did during Indy's charity stream. While we catch up on questions, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. We've got multiple shows coming up. We've got Tara Volker, who's going to be here on Friday talking about game accessibility. She actually is at Microsoft on the Mixer team and she was one of the founders of the Gaming Accessibility Conference that we've been big fans of. Next Wednesday, we've got Richard Ludlow of Hexany Audio. He's going to be talking about getting great audio for your indie game. Then we have coming up in February, Greg and Dunn, who just announced the publishing at Hothead Studios that they're going to be doing. And I can tell you right now, Gregan is looking for, hyper casual games. He and I had that conversation the other day. And then later in February on the 8th, we've got a whole show with getting your game funded with Jason De La Roca. The benefits of equity funding versus project funding, that sort of stuff. I'm going to I completely just lost my train of thought. We've got a new Facebook page for the show, and then we're putting together a micro conference, and we've got a short little survey that we're doing. So I'll post that link in chat too. It's literally 5 questions. Any feedback that we can get on that would be fantastic. We want to know who wants to come, who do you want to talk to, all that sort of stuff. It's going to be an online only event, and tickets will cost no more than $100 to do, face-to-face meetings with publishers, actually. So, all right, that was my housekeeping. Indy, where are we at on questions?
All right, questions. Mobile industries. There's a comment. Crytex. Mobile industry is just the best market to invest in right now. Still the highest growth in 2018 compared. Rock Knight Studio says, I followed you on Twitter, Lloyd. Would you mind if I would shoot a question or two in the future? We have some investors in the near future who might be interested in hyper casual games.
So, of course, I'm always open to people asking me questions any time. I enjoy. What was the first question? I'm sorry,
it wasn't a question. It was just a comment.
Okay.
Saying mobile industry is the best market to invest in right now. Still the highest growth in 2018 compared.
I guess compared to what? I prefer mobile.
Industry.
I definitely think I kind of broadly define mobile as this whole free. It's converged. You see Fortnite's on mobile. Is Epic a mobile publisher now, or obviously they're still on desktop. They've started their store and everything. I actually think it's going to be less platform driven, more game driven. Where I think it is. I think lighter, mass market games are still the big growth area. I mean, I just saw, it's like, I mean, you saw probably, Netflix saying that Fortnite's a bigger competitor than Amazon Prime or other streaming services. I think the entertainment space, the game space is still a great space, but it's also you need to know where to invest because there's a lot of companies losing money.
All right, so Peter says, been looking forward to the stream all week as a hyper-casual mobile company, PR, social media person. This is definitely in my wheelhouse. So yeah, I mean, this is a huge thing right now. I mean, this is obviously, I'll be blunt, I didn't expect this much reaction. This is awesome. So
nor did I.
All right, so let's go back to the slots analogy, and you may know where I'm going with this, Lloyd, because you and I are both big fans of this. You have a lot of people that are jumping in, fairly easy to make games. There's a lot of saturation in there. Is the next step licensing? I
wouldn't say it's the next step. I think it's going to happen. It's a good opportunity. It goes. There's a little bit of some challenges there. I think part of it is because these games are so, you rely on putting out a lot of games. So, Voodoo has no concerns if, 6 out of 7, I don't know what number they aim for, say 6 out of 7 games fail, but neither does even an indie developer because you're not relying on one game. That means that when you do this licensing agreement, you have to be aligned with the licensor or else they're going to be like, first, you don't want the approval process on a 3-month game to take 3 years. And we've seen that type of thing happen.
God, yes.
And you can't, and the production values are different. And most licensors have no idea what they're doing in the gaming space to begin with. And when they start, they might be expecting you to create, Fortnite, and you're creating, a hyper casual game, and they're going to want you to make it more complex. And to me, the biggest success factor for hyper casual games is simplicity. So I think there's challenges in managing licensors and managing the deal and everything. But on the other hand, they're going to, just by putting out a, Love Island hyper casual game, you're going to probably get hundreds of thousands of downloads. And if you get past that, and that kind of changes the equation to begin with. So long answer short is yes, but you really need to manage licensors, and it's not going to be the right thing for all licensors. They have to understand the space. They have to understand what they're getting into. Maybe it makes sense for a big licensor to do, let's say Star Wars, to do 30 Star Wars hyper casual games rather than 1 or 2. But that requires them to have a different approval process, to have different expectations. It could make them a lot of money. Some of these games make more money than traditional free-to-play games or even console games. So the money's there for it, but you really have. I don't think any of them have. I said I'm late to the hyper-casual world. They're going to probably discover it in 5 or 10 years.
Well, I mean, given the fact that EA's had their Star Wars exclusive for how many years now, and they've only put out 2 games, and one of them was just absolutely brutalized at retail, then I don't know if there's issues I have with Star Wars licensing in the first place. Spillmaker wants to know, he may have missed it, but what is the difference between casual and hyper casual? That's actually a very good question that we could have started with, but we didn't.
I mean, there's no set rule on any of this stuff. I can say, the most complex game's hyper casual. You can say GTA is hyper casual. No one's going to prove it in a court of law that it's not. I think it goes down to this, lightweight. It has to be a really small game. And what casual games, even like the Match 3, look at, something like Candy Crush, which everyone should know, that's not really a lightweight game anymore. Most of the hyper casual games, they have a very small metagame. Most casual games have a really big metagame. And the big thing is monetization. Hyper casual games are all about that day 1, day 7 retention, whereas casual games are all about in-app purchases, which is based on, as Dan pointed out earlier, really appealing to VIPs. So you're monetizing differently. It's a lighter game, but it's just not. And by lighter, it's also lighter in not only in terms of how many megabytes, but in terms of the gameplay mechanic. It's really focused on that core mechanic, not the metagame.
All right, so wait, how is Candy Crush not this? I mean, you're just swiping. It's a match 3 game, and the metagame is literally following a trail. Unless
but that trail's the reason. The trail's what makes so much money. That's why Bejeweled never made money, which was simply just swiping. Whereas Candy Crush does, because the metagame is how the industry evolved. But it's also, if you download Candy Crush, my guess is it's 100. It's probably right under the limit for a download on non-Wi-Fi networks, over mobile data. So it's probably 100 megs. Most of the or more. Most of these hyper-casual games are 4 or 5 megs. It's just it's a much quicker experience. It's a much lighter experience. Candy Crush is now kind of serious because you keep having to replay the level to progress, and it's just. Again, it's more about the progression. You're replaying the level so that you can get to the next level, and whereas here you're just trying to keep getting a higher and higher score. That's in most of these hyper casual games. It doesn't you don't care about getting it again being at a higher level than your 5 Facebook friends. It's just it's just you're not paying much attention. You're on that line at Starbucks, and it's a quicker experience. And even just a quick experience, a lot of levels on Candy Crush, and I have to admit I haven't played it recently, but I do play Gummy Drop. A lot of levels you're not going to finish in that time you're online at Starbucks, unless unless you have a really stupid barista who's not getting quickly through the line.
No, that makes sense when you explain it that way. Because it's just funny after all these years to see that what we considered 10 years ago to be a very simple meta, in the fact that we would literally sit down and tell developers, that's a great match 3 game, but you have to have a meta attached to it. And now we're actually going backwards, and it's like, okay, that's a great match 3 game, leave it like it is. That's interesting that simple meta from years ago is now considered too hardcore to be hyper casual.
But I do want to make kind of 2 points. So I will stress what I said at the beginning. There is no clear definition of either of them. So maybe if you go talk to someone at King, he might say, okay, Candy Crush is hyper casual. You can't really challenge him on that. But I think it's exactly what you described. One of my big things is people like simplicity. It's like, why is Uber so successful? It's because it's so easy to get a ride and to pay for it and everything in one experience. And I think what happened in casual games is they got a lot more complex. They got away from the reason you were playing. Why I was playing Bejeweled probably 3 times a day, 10 years ago or whenever it first hit mobile. It was a really light experience. And now the casual games have become much more serious. And hyper casual might be a reaction to that, in that people want, it's the same reason people like the retro Atari games. They want that easy experience that doesn't really tax them. They're looking for something simple, and the casual games have evolved, and they've created this opening for hyper casual just to take maybe the space that they used to have. And I hadn't really thought about it until you just mentioned it, but again, it's maybe they've created their own monster in creating this opportunity to unseat them.
Huh.
Well, all right, we have a question up here about eSports. That's an interesting one. Where is it?
I think it was simply...
It's Peter's Pants. Do you guys think a world of eSports is possible for a hyper-casual game?
I don't know. I hadn't thought about it. Anything's possible. I don't see why not.
I don't either. I mean, you've got... What's the Clash? Not Clash. What's the Supercell game with the
Clash Royale? Clash of Clans.
Clash Royale. I mean, you're seeing esports with games like that, and there is a little more strategy involved in it. But at the same time, there's nothing that says you couldn't do something similar with esport, because somebody...
It might be almost like regular sports where you have like NASCAR and IndyCar racing, but you also have hot rods that go where they just burn out and they go in a straight sprint for 30 seconds. So casual games might be like the hot rods. I mean, hyper casual might be the hot rods, and you still have the more sophisticated esports.
All right, well, let's put somebody on the spot here because this will be fun. Peter's Pants says, the company that they work with allows people to compete in mini games 3 times a week and provide a $1,000 prize pot for each mini game. It's like HQ Trivia for mini games. So is that a step towards the esports page? Is that the next step or an evolution for these hyper casual games?
I mean, it could be. It could also be an evolution for the HQ Trivia type games. I guess something quicker. I'll go back to what makes hyper casual successful is the quick, simple, and that's something that should work in esports. It should work in trivia. It's kind of. I feel it could almost work anywhere. You make products better by taking things out.
Yeah, simplify, basically. All right, so lost my train of thought. Questions. So we've covered how can a small team make a name for themselves in the space. It's creating high quality, quick games, but then you've got to get those games in front of publishers.
Let me just make a quick comment, based on our experience. Companies shouldn't be that worried about making a name for themselves. Very few in the game industry, it's more about the game than the developer. Make successful games, make money on your games, and I wouldn't worry about the developer, your company's brand that much. It does. I don't think many gamers care, especially in the hyper casual space. And I think it's even true in the console space. There has been some differentiation. There are some exceptions to the rule. But very, very, even publishers, very few games are bought because of the company that makes them. The same with movies. You don't go to a 20th Century Fox movie or whoever. Disney, again, being the exception.
Well, I mean, but you still get publishers that are all wrapped around their brand, and they still insist that that's what's driving things, even though we've said it's not.
Yeah, and this is why there's a lot of publishers I don't respect.
So, all right. I'm not going to name names, but there are companies who have been accused of stealing these games in the past. Is that a danger for indie teams? How can that, how can we protect against that?
I'm not as tied up into the community as you are. I can't say if that is how prevalent it is. I remember what we saw in the other gaming spaces and what you see in most industries and you see in venture capital and stuff. It's not worth it for publishers to steal ideas because then companies won't go to them. This type of stuff gets out. So you need to, my recommendation would be ask around before you start sending your games to everybody. You'll quickly find out who the dishonest publishers are. Because the other side is there's always dishonest publishers. And I still remember one who sent us a check in UK pounds for something that was never going to clear. It's publishers. That. That was Eve Online, actually, related to Eve. But
it wasn't CCP that did it before anybody goes, oh my God, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't CCP. It was a British company.
It was somebody
who's no
else.
longer around. But publishers there's some really scummy, dishonest publishers. Why it's great if you don't know what you're doing to work with an agent, work with someone who knows the space, but at a minimum, network, talk to other developers. Developers love to talk to each other. Find out who's the good guys, who the bad guys are. I think there's probably very few who are going to steal your ideas. I wounn't go the NDA route. None of the good big publishers are going to sign an NDA, and if they are, it's pretty much unenforceable. At best, they'll send you their NDA, which says they can steal any idea they want. It's really try and go the legal route. I think it's reputation, and if you ask around and you're savvy about it, but that's also why you don't want to prostitute yourself and send your game to everybody on a list. You need to actually do your due diligence before you do it.
I also remember the company that concocted, and this is back in the day of fax machines when we didn't have that much email. They created a wire transfer in Word and faxed it to us to make us think that they had actually sent the money from the wire transfer. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we should have you. At Halloween, we did a show called Horror Stories. And it was us and Tom Biscaglia and somebody else was on there. And we just basically told all the bullshit we've seen over the years. So we need to have you on when we do that show again because those
it creates a little PTSD in all of us.
there's 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 so many of those wonderful stories because at this point, yeah, we've seen a lot. But yeah, Peter, they basically took Word and created a document that looked just exactly like the wire transfer confirmation forms that we would get when they really did send money. God, and we used to have a document that was all of the excuses we had seen for not getting paid.
Oh yeah.
And some of them were just absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, someone said they had a urinary tract infection.
That was one of them. Yeah, they couldn't send it because yes. Anyway, all right. So you talked about a lot of the subgenres in hyper casual. Do you have examples of some of the ones that are out there, the more popular ones?
I think there's, so we keep I think 6 or 7 that I think, tapping, touching is one, swiping, drawing, turning, swerving, rising, falling, stacking, and merging. And I think all of those are to any game developer, those are probably pretty explanatory. Happy to kind of talk more about them, but those are the main categories. So each of them I could give examples if you want, but again, I think that's probably, everyone probably knows what I'm talking about.
So Div's got a question of RPG and hyper casual. How would you?
I think RPG almost by definition though is pretty.
I know, but I mean, you think about it. We've gotten to the point where we have idle games where you have a game that you don't actually play. So there's got to be a way to do. There's got to be a way to do an RPG hyper casual, and maybe that's the next meta on there. It's like, yeah, you've got. See, I still think that there's going to be somebody that comes along. If WarioWare was hold my beer. If WarioWare was released as a free-to-play hyper-casual game, would it work?
I think if it's broken up, a lot of those games would work. I'm not sure about the bundle side or not, but it's because I think a lot of those Atari games work as hyper-casual games. And I think there is an answer for RPG, and I think that's where the opportunity. If you're trying to do another tapping, it's going to be hyper competitive, part of the pun. But figure out how to do RPG. No one's really figured out how to do social casino in the hyper casual space. There's some card games, but maybe there's something you can do with slots. That's where I think. Those are the next people who are going to make 7-8 figures on a game is own that and become that first really good implementation of an RPG. I mean, I can't design my way out of the box. I wouldn't be able to do it. But, I'm sure a lot of people, who are, that's probably look at what's working in hyper casual, but rather than copying it, see how you can take those core features, the fact that it's light, the fact that you don't need a tutorial, and then see how that connects with, categories that of work that haven't been brought to hyper casual yet. If I was creative and I was a developer, that's the route I would go.
So Pine asks, can you add advertising to IPs that don't traditionally have ads, like Mario?
I mean, it's up to the licensor. I think someone like Nintendo probably wouldn't be overly crazy about it. Other companies, as long as they're making money, won't care.
Welcome to the world of licensing.
Yeah. And that's why I say you really have to get a licensor who understands casual. They have to be comfortable with ads or have a different purpose. Well, if they don't want monetization, there's really not much benefit to you. But they have to be comfortable with how the ads work, and that has to be kind of part of the model that you sell them on, rather than getting them to agree to do a hyper casual game. You spend 3 months, you show them the game, and they're like, "Oh no, you can't have ads in it."
Yeah, I mean, and it clarifies it from the point of view. Elsa, seriously, can you hear her snoring?
No. I thought that was one of the listeners.
Oh my God, no, that's her. So, it's just it meant from the point of view of the player or the buyer. I think my take on that, Pine, is people didn't really jump on the Mario Runner game as much as we all thought they would. So I don't know that. I mean, it would depend, honestly. I mean, but it's not like we haven't seen IP and characters jump genres and things like that. I mean, look at Mario versus Rabbids. That's no one expected to see Mario wielding a gun and shooting rabbits, but we have it.
But it has to work. I think that's the thing. It has to somehow work in people's mind with the IP.
Toss something over there and wake her up. I can barely hear y'all over her snoring. So yeah, and now Devorium and I are designing an RPG for Hypercasual. All right, so let's jump through. So while we're trying to catch up on questions, Lloyd, is anything else that you want to add? Because we're already past our time, and
we've talked a lot about I always look at the future because I think a lot of people, unfortunately, are going to rush into it now, and it's going to be like too late, and they're going to be like, "Oh, you told us to go into hyper casual, and now no one's making money." So yeah, I think to be able
welcome
to make
to the game industry.
Exactly, and I've seen it before, and it's sad, and it's sad for the people who do. There's a lot of ways that they can still make money, but I think what you have to look at it then is like your RPG idea. It's how can we do things differently, but leveraging hyper casual. So it could be new genres, it could be RPG, it could be casino. Again, I don't know all the genres. It could be new monetization. So effectively, everyone had given up on ads as the main monetization channel until hyper casual came up. But that doesn't mean maybe subscriptions. You're seeing subscriptions taking more and more of app revenue. Maybe there's maybe you let people subscribe to your hyper casual channel, and all the games you publish have no ads. I'm just making up something there, but I think the point is think of new business models as well. Think of new ways to do hyper casual, because if you try doing what everyone else is doing, maybe Voodoo's going to increase their take to 80% because it is so dependent on the publishers. Maybe the CPIs are going to go up. It's going to become a much more competitive industry. That's what I wanted to stress with the social casino analogy. Everything becomes more competitive in the gaming space, especially because the barriers to entry aren't big. So you have to think of where you want to be 6 months, 9 months from now, and have something that's going to be unique. Not the biggest. That doesn't mean creating a really complex hyper casual game, which makes it unhyper casual. But it's like thinking of something that 20 other people are not working on at the same time,
which is difficult. All right, and Spielmaker had a very good point. This weekend is Global Game Jam. The types of games that you make during any game jam are exactly what hyper casual is. I mean, you're creating a very, small footprint of it, and it's obviously not going to be polished, but designing that core game loop, that's exactly what you're doing. So, we could have a new crop of hyper casual games, and that innovation may be coming this weekend with the Global Game Jam. Anyone? Nobody?
I actually lost you for a minute, Jay. I just got you back. Sorry.
I said that this weekend's Global Game Jam, Spielmaker pointed out that we can see a whole lot of new hyper casual games come out of it. And that, that whole game jam mentality is a great place to iterate on these ideas.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, and that makes me think, is hyper casual make the industry a lot more creative. So what the industry has become, and it has been for like 20 years, people copy everyone else. Now, how many Bejeweled clones and Peggle clones did we see? You would talk about hidden object games. There's very little innovation because I don't want to get into the reasons. There's very little innovation. But if it's so easy to make a hyper casual game, the people who are truly artists, who are truly good designers, and they don't just play one on TV, they're going to create the good games that make the $10 million. If the barriers to entry are low, then what's going to differentiate yourself is actually your creativity and your ideas. And the good designers will create games that Ketchup and whatever don't have. And the people who just copy everyone else, that's where it's going to get really commoditized, and they're not going to make much money.
Nobody steal me and Devorium's idea for a RPG hyper casual. Don't do it. We've called dibs on that.
Yeah, because you only need an idea.
Yeah, no, really. Which is why when I'm on an airplane and somebody says, "What do you do?" I say, "I sell insurance," because if you tell them you work in the game industry, then all you're going to get is game pitch ideas the whole time you're on the flight. All right, so we are wrapping up. If you've got any questions, hyper-casual MMORPG. Yes, exactly. That's what we need. If you've got any final questions for Lloyd, post them up in here. As always, Lloyd is on our Discord. Feel free to, hop on there and post questions. And, he's on Twitter, and he loves talking to folks. He's a very outgoing person, right, Lloyd?
Except in real life.
Yeah, I know. Aside from, when you're not on the internet, it's all all right.
But
So
believe everything you read on the internet.
In summary, though, we've got a trend in the industry that is still on its upswing. It is something that indie devs can be a part of. We don't recommend you trying to self-publish them, but there are enough publishers out there who are hungry for these games that you have options. You have to make sure you vet those publishers, though. Quick games, lack of a meta is actually a good thing, and your monetization is primarily driven through ad revenue. So does that pretty much sum it up, Lloyd?
I think so. And it's getting more competitive.
Yeah, and it's going to get more competitive. Licensing is going to be next. It's just a matter of finding the licensees that, understand it and get it.
The good thing is they're probably playing these games because 60% of downloads are hyper-casual games. And if you can draw that connection in their head, because I found that even trying to sell it, the concept internally, it actually makes a difference.
Oh, Lloyd, you rattled off the big publishers in games, and I know you're not actually in Twitch and you're not seeing this, but can you type those up in Discord and send them to me, and I'll post them in there real quick?
Sure. Give me a couple minutes.
All right. So yes. So while Lloyd's typing that up, our upcoming events are listed below on the schedule. We've got Tara talking about gaming accessibility on Friday. We've got Richard talking about audio for indie games next Wednesday. Next Friday is Greg and Dunn, who's the director of publishing at Hothead, who is also looking for hyper-casual. So we'll probably continue this conversation, next Friday as well. And then the following Friday, we've got Jason De La Roca talking about funding for your games and your studio. Do you go equity? Do you go project? And what the base is for all of that. And then please do me a solid, and we're going to post that link again. Go fill out this super quick form and let us know what you want to see in a online micro conference where you can actually just sit down and talk to publishers and pitch your games without spending thousands of dollars flying to San Francisco or getting hotels and all the stuff that goes into a lot of the major conferences. And then Lloyd's got this stuff right here. Did I miss anything, Indy?
No, you got it all. Got it all.
I am on a roll. All right. Publishers. And for those of you listening at home and not watching chat, Voodoo, Ketchup, and Ketchup got bought by Ubisoft.
Ubisoft,
right?
Yeah.
Graham, who's owned by Zynga. Plagendary. Whenever I think we've come up with every name possible for a game company, then we get something different. Quali, KWALEE, and AppLovin.
Oh, sweet AppLovin.
It's that. So, but that's interesting because we do see, and we've had folks on the show that have gone from, like the Hidden Levels guys, who went from we're a website to now we're a stream team to now we're a publisher. And we've seen for years as well, PR and marketing agencies turn into publishers. And now we're seeing, ad companies, turning into publishers.
I think it makes a lot of sense in this space because all the revenue comes from ads. So they're effectively creating inventory.
So, hold on. Spillmaker says, I don't know if Congregate is interested in publishing things like this. Don't know, as they are a publisher though too, and they've got their new cartridge store. So my guess is, yeah, I mean, Congregate's been in the simple game space for a while. So have you seen them on the mobile side much, Lloyd?
No, and that's also what's interesting in the simple game space. They don't seem to come up in the hyper casual conversation. Miniclip's another one. They've been around forever. They're owned by Tencent, or largely owned by Tencent. But they're and they were doing largely hyper casual before hyper casual, but no one ever talks to them about hyper casual now. So these are the ones who kind of come up the most. But it's in the early days of these industries, it does change a lot. But I also would say, someone who's not exactly in it, like Congregate's all about, Congregate or Spiel are all about kind of those, smaller kind of flash games. If they don't really understand the space as a indie, I'd be really worried about working with them. I'd rather have someone who has a track record doing them on mobile, who's already done this. They already have that model. They already understand the KPIs. You don't want to learn with them.
No, that's true. Very true.
You don't want them to learn on your game.
And it could be a situation. So obviously, games that are built in Flash, it's difficulties bringing them to mobile. What about HTML5 games? Is this what's finally going to make HTML5 games like something real?
I mean, I think still most discoveries in the App Store. Plus, I don't know about serving ads in HTML5 because most of the ad networks and mediation, I think it's not. I don't know if they even have HTML5 SDKs, and it's all about the ad revenue, and you need a good ad revenue experience. So I'm not sure again if there's value on the HTML5 side because it's not as if you need to go to a portal to discover them or anything.
That'd be interesting. I don't know about the ads on HTML. I mean, I would assume we have ads on HTML5 games. I mean,
well, but the ads also have to be, but most of the ad revenue comes from ads for mid-course mobile games or social casino, the ones that generate the money. If they might not be buying ads on HTML5 because of the friction in terms of getting people to then download from the App Store, which means your ad revenue is going to be a lot less. If you're just selling like Coca-Cola ads, which has a much lower CPM.
Good point.
I think most of the ad revenues on iOS right now, this is you want to be in the iOS App Store.
Huh.
And Android.
Is that because of piracy on Android?
No, I mean it's just people spend more money on it. I mean, Apple users are just worth a lot more. They've always have been. I mean, Android's don't get me wrong. I mean, you're still going to get 40% or so of your revenue from Android, but iOS has just always been more. I think it's because of the demographics. So even like with advertising, and I don't want to sound snobby or anything, but wealthier people, Apple skews to you're not going to buy an iPhone XS if you're on minimum wage. Hopefully.
Yeah, that's what. and several people in chat have popped up to say the very same thing. It's like it's that's it. I mean, you're not going to spend $1,000, $1,500 on a phone. Yeah. If you can't afford to watch some ads and spend some more money here. So, and
that guy earlier was talking about the morality of asking people to spend $1,000 in a social game. You can say the same about the morality of asking them to spend $1,500.
Oh, yes, exactly. Spend $1,500 on a phone for your kid. You know,
and then have the battery die, so you have to upgrade to the next one.
That's a very, very good point. Well, Lloyd, thank you so much for coming on, man. It was so good.
It was real.
It's and thank you from me for all that you've done for me over the years. I really appreciate it.
It was mutual. You helped us a lot. So thanks, and I enjoyed this.
Well,
nice meeting you, Dan.
It was a lot of it was good meeting you. It was a lot of information going by very quickly with tons of questions, which was awesome.
No, I really enjoyed that people asked questions. So it was unexpected and satisfying.
It's good. We have good users. We have good viewers.
One time. Unexpected and very satisfying.
Did they say the same thing?
I mean, does it matter? I mean,
All righty.
That's bad. All right.
That's-
Thank you guys. Yeah, we'll be back
That's
Friday.
it for today.
Thank you both. Bye.
Thanks, Lloyd.
Talk to y'all later.